If skills are not enough, what is the real currency for growth today? I'll go with you, Harry, first. So if skills are not enough in the workplace, what exactly is the real currency of the workplace today?
Thanks a lot, Noella, and thanks for putting this together because every opportunity to connect and help us, create an ecosystem that help us to learn from each other is very, very important. So I'm also here to learn today because having Yemi as part of panelists and yourself driving this for me is a big privilege. So again, critical questions because it's a lot of skilled people, fantastic in terms of what they do in terms of the skills, but sometimes they just don't go far. And I think that's the essence of the question that you've asked. And I think I want to start by saying, first of all, this question doesn't in any way say that skills are not important. They are extremely important. In fact, it's the baseline. It's the baseline. You have to have that to start with. And I want to just start also by saying that skills will get you into the room. It will open the door. Absolutely. So I want to start with that skills are important. But I haven't gotten into the room. How long you stay in that room, whether you stay in or get thrown out, will then depend on this what more that we're going to be talking about very quickly. So that's, again, for time's sake, I want to leave it there in terms of the importance of skill itself. But having gotten into the room, staying long in that room and taking a position in that room and growing in that room, these are the things we want to look at very, very quickly. And I'll say that one of those you will call invisible, tenets that would help us to stay in that room, having been brought in by skill, is adaptability. And I'll say that because there's a lot going on, right? You wake up one day and it's very different from yesterday. Within the work environment, a lot can change. Today, technology is changing, the laws are changing. Well, you know, for instance, that the tax laws in Nigeria have changed and the impact on HR. So leave it there. One of the first and most important I'll speak to is just being adaptable, being able to note the change and make and, align with the change to help it support the business. Very, very, very important. And the reason for that is because our world itself is a changing world. So whatever skills you've come, and I want to just leave it there by saying, look, at some point, businesses employ typewriters. Yes, but if you remained, and that will get you into so, but if you remain a typewriter in today's world, you'll be a relic. And the other thing to speak to very, very quickly around this, I haven't spoken around that adaptability because I'm sure Yemi has a lot around that to say as well, is emotional intelligence. Yeah. Knowing timing of what you say, what you do in that room where skill has brought you into is very, very important. Someone shared an example once where, he was in a board meeting and he wasn't meant to be there, but again, his boss was not available. So he was representing his boss. And at some point, he was really correcting the chairman, but chairman quite a lot. And says, well, with all due respect, you are not right and all of that. Okay, no problem. But that's where emotional intelligence comes in. And after the meeting, he was given very, very clear feedback. So I'm speaking, to the extent that first adaptability, the other emotional intelligence, timing for what you do, what you say, timing for your actions, how you say them, all of those very, very important. And lastly, I'll speak to around the three things to speak on beyond skills is continuous learning. So yes, the skills that brought you into that room have brought you there, but can you continue to reskill? Can you learn more? Can you take up more skills as well, having gotten into that room? Those are three things I'll speak to Noella very, very quickly. Adaptability, emotional intelligence, and just having that mind to take on more, to learn more, as it were. Thanks.
Knowing the right time to speak and how to speak is very important. Oh, goodness. So our good intentions can actually land us in trouble. This is what they just said without saying it exactly like that. As a leader, what do you consider when you want to fill big roles in your organization,
Okay.
in your team, in your
Thanks a
region?
lot. I think Yemi dropped a lot of very, very, very important nuggets around this. I'll just touch a few more just to accentuate the very great points that he has made, because you talk about trusting for bigger roles. Those are the key words. Some people have been entrusted with bigger roles and they got there and they wish they never did those roles. They just wish they never. In fact, they felt like going home because of how those things came out eventually, So this is very important, because when entrusted with bigger roles, how we perform in those places then says whether we will be established in those roles. Because quite often than not, it's often temporary, ad hoc in the first place. I'm not available today. Can you stand in for me here? That kind of thing. So that's often what happens at first. Now, it's how we perform with those ad hoc temporary opportunities that then tell whether we will be put in such bigger roles in a more permanent basis. And as I said before, so it's again, some people have grabbed the opportunity and made the best of it. Some people have said, I wish I was never given this. So a few things that Yemi said, I'll just accentuate a little bit. First of all, I call it the room test. Yeah. And Yemi made that point. I'll just put it a bit. The room test, basically, that boss, that CEO, that director is saying, if I'm not there and I put this person in that room with stakeholders, with customers, with the CEO, with the board, how will that person come out? That's the room test. And that's one of the things in the leader's mind. So I call it the room test. I won't be there. XYZ will be there for me. How will this person perform? That's very, very important for the leader. And I'll say, because Yemi has made the point, I'll leave it at that. The other thing to speak to quite clearly, and Yemi again made that point, composure. Yeah. If we are scattered and everywhere, then the boss will say, I can't put this guy there. Though very skilled. And that's why you're talking about invisible skills. You're talking about, again, the topic. This guy is super skilled, but when pressure comes, he capitulates. I'm not going to put that person there, because sometimes you cannot predict what happens in that room. Yes, you can't. So things can come up. How will this person deal with what comes up? Very, very important as well. Alignment is another one. So is this person aligned with our core objectives? Because that becomes then your compass. It becomes your anchor. How is this person aligned with the things that matter to us? And interestingly, as you interact with people, you'll be able to tell who amongst your colleagues is aligned or who is misaligned, who is driving their own objectives and who is driving the objectives of the business. That's also very, very important. I spoke about emotional intelligence earlier. You can't overemphasize that. Critical, because that affects the issue again of timing of what you do. The good book, for those who read it, myself inclusive, says there's time for everything. What may just be right now may just be completely wrong at another instance. So that's where emotional intelligence comes in. As I did say before, Yemi has really hit the notes on this one, so I'll just leave it at that. What I call the room test. I'm thinking this person I'm going to put in this room, how will he represent, me or the brand where he's sitting before the CEO or board or customers, as the case may be, and some of those factors we have spoken to earlier. Yeah.
Has there ever been a moment when you realized in your career that skills alone wouldn't take you to the next level? And what did you do? So we need your personal experience now.
Thanks, Noella, and it's good you asked me this one. Well, I'll speak to this, and I'll try to keep the details, some of the details out, because again, so in an organization I work for, at certain levels of leadership, you are not just promoted. You go and vie for it. You compete with your colleagues. That's what it is. You grow and grow to a certain stage. Then when you get to a stage, nobody hands it over to you. Because as part of succession plan, there are 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of you who become eligible or qualified for that higher role. Of course, organizations are mostly pyramidal. So that's what it is. So you go and compete. In this particular case, then I had to compete, of course, with other colleagues. By providence, by God's grace, and all of the things you could think of, I came on top. So it meant I became the leader. Now, some of those I competed with became part of my team members, as it were, and a number of others. And I tell you, it was tough. Again, because within that function, There were people who had been in that function for ages. They've been there. They've been there. I haven't been there. And so I'm coming from somewhere else. I'm coming into that team, and they're leading the team. So there are lots of issues. To cut a long story short, life was tough. I'm making it as quick as possible because you get to a certain stage of work and leadership. One of your major factors for success is information, data, what's available to you. And where there are legacy issues, some of those data in people's boxes and their own places, you just do not know what to do. You are flushed. But there was work to be done, and it was difficult. And first of all, you don't even know what is hidden and not hidden, because until you know something is hidden, that's when you know that thing is you should have had. You don't even know. And you then go to meetings, you go to leadership things, and you are flushed over and over again, and things pop at you, and your eyes open up, and you say, hey, what was this about? So that was the scenario. So in terms of how I got the role, obviously, mostly it's the skills, because you were interviewed. So the skills, basically, I would say, got me the role, because we're all interviewed. Now, performing on the role, obviously, those skills were not enough. Things were challenging. So some of the things we had to do, basically had to walk into the hearts and minds of my team members. And it was essential. It was essential. So relationship management became a major, major issue. I needed to get to a point where I would not be seen as this stranger who has come to usurp, as this person who has come to take our role, but as a trusted partner and leader. That became my objective. How do I get to that point where within that team, I am trusted? Because without that, trust me, if you look back and there's no one following you, then like someone said, I think Sheikh Mojid will say that, then you're taking a walk. If you turn back and there's no one following you, you're taking a walk. And you say you're a leader. So it was critical then for me to build trust, to be able to say to the team, not when I say not just verbally, but to be able to demonstrate to the team that I wasn't just someone who had come to usurp, as I said before, but a trusted leader with clear objectives. There were things that had to be done. For instance, I'm coming on a Friday, and I'm just buying some gifts for team members. I'm saying this probably for the first time on air. And I'm buying gifts for team members. So, this is for you, this is for you. Did all of that kind of stuff to build trust. But there were also times I had to take everyone into the room to say, hey, here's my vulnerability. What do we need to do? We have work to be done. So how do we deal with these things? So communication was very, very, very important. Over time, we built trust. But also, then I needed to work to support them. Some of them had, as it were, their own things going on within their space. It was important to them that they knew I was there for them. And that helped to build trust within that team. And once we grew the trust capital, I can tell you, as part of the outcome for that, eventually for that year, when we had an appraisal outcome, my team had one of the best across the business. Of course, not that year, that was the following year, obviously, when by the time we had built trust, we had built capital, we had communicated better, they knew that one could lead them in that sense. That was it in terms of what helped.
Henry, in your opinion, what would you say are those three major traits, that makes an employee very attractive for leadership positions? What are those three traits, in your opinion?
Thanks a lot. And I think you will notice that most of these things just tie up together. So I'll just start from where Yemi stopped. I think Yemi saying, blow your trumpet, but don't blow a vuvuzela. For those of us who remember vuvuzela, it was used at one of the World Cups in South Africa, and it was pretty noisy. And I think if you just go back to that same point as well, looking at the orchestra, while one instrument should not outloud the others, but again, if you take that instrument away, any discerning music person will notice that that instrument is silent. So I think he's saying, don't be silent.
Yes,
and so the first point I'm going to speak about, just speaking on that point, is what I call narrative control. You need to control the narrative. So if you need to control it. So working hard is good, but it is not enough. The value of your work needs to be told. At a presentation I had recently, I was saying to people, don't be the best kept secret. You're doing a lot of work, but you're cocooned somewhere. It's not going to work if you really want to grow. So the first thing I'll speak to, and I think that just ties with Yemi's point, is, you control the narrative about the value of your work, about your alignment to the business, about your objectives that you're driving. You control the narrative. Who best to tell Noela's story than Noela? But that's the truth. The difference between us and books is that even the best book ever in the world is in the shelf. It cannot say, read me, until somebody says, I've read this book. Do you want to read it? Then you go and pick it to read. But as humans, we can go beyond that. You're a fantastic book. Tell people to read you. So the first thing I'll speak to is what I call narrative control. Doing the work is good. Go beyond that to talk about the value of the work you do and the value you bring to the business as much as is possible without creating loudness. That's the first one. The second one I'll speak to is what I call very clearly anticipation, right? Sometimes you do a job and your boss will tell you, God bless you, Noela. God bless you, Yemi. Your boss is saying that because somehow they feel you even read their minds before they even told you what the problem was. You've hit it, you've done it. Sometimes the bosses are hugging you with all the passion because deep in their mind, this thing is there. They haven't even told you that this is the problem. But guess what? On a Monday morning, you've come up with something and the boss looks at you. Are you clairvoyant? Are you telepathic? Why? Anticipation. Anticipation. You are thinking, what next? Am I thinking what next? And that is where you then solve your boss's problem before, and I say again, before he begins to see the problem. Guess what? He's excited. He hugs you, says, God bless you because of that. The third thing to speak to, you said 3, I'll give 4 for the price of 3, but I'll make them quick. So the first one I said is you control the narrative. The second one I said is anticipation. You anticipate your boss's problem, anticipate the business's problem, and you try to solve them before they even become issue. The third one is relentless curiosity. Relentless curiosity. At all times, you are basically saying that you're learning and learning more about the business. What are the things that drive this business? What are the main value drivers for us? How is this business meant to be done? Because if you stay continuously on just that your lane and the business has several lanes, how can you grow? How can you grow? So yes, you understand what's happening in your lane, but you are also looking at the other lanes of the business. I'll say this very, very quickly. For that particular example I gave about that point of elevation, where I said in this occasion I spoke about, they don't give it to you when you get to that stage. You go and compete with your colleagues. I'll tell you in that particular case, what gave me the urge at that time, and I had the shortest HR experience, the shortest of all the team. But what gave the edge? We all thought, or rather most people thought they were going to ask specifically just HR questions. But guess what? We got there and there were questions around production. There were questions around shipping, commercial, the business, how it is run. And I'll say with all due humility, that was what was helpful for me because I had the shortest HR experience at the time but because the business was looking for a leader beyond being an HR person. So how curious are you about other things happening? Or are you just staying in your lane? I'm head of policy and that is it. And then when they ask you questions around even the next HR function recruitment, you can't even say about it. Or industrial relations, you can't speak to it, or employee engagement, you can't speak to it. So that's very important for me. I call that relentless curiosity. More often than not, we do have the time. I know that things can be tough, but sometimes we spend the time doing other things. And when people begin to grow, we say, why is Peter growing beyond this one? Why is this person growing? But these are the things they do. Because this relentless curiosity helps to ensure that when you speak, the things you say matter to the business. And the last one I'll speak about is visionary thinking. Yeah, what next? What next? Leaders are thinking that way. If you want to show that you're a leader, you should be thinking that. So I've spoken to 4 things quickly. Narrative control. You control the narrative. That ties with what Yemi spoke about. You do a good job, continue to do a good job, talk about the value of it. The other is anticipation, solve your boss's problem before they know it. The third is relentless curiosity. And the fourth, I said 4 for the price of 3 is the one I call visionary thinking. Thanks, Noella.
There are many people in this room, I believe, who feel that they have been overlooked despite working so hard. What piece of advice would you give them?
I keep go back to this example. When I got my letter of appointment to that role, I walked straight to my boss and I gave him this appointment letter that I was given. I said, thank you. And he was wondering, why do you say thank you? I said, because I glorify God, but I thank you. And he said, why? I said, because you kept throwing me everywhere. You kept bringing roles. You kept stretching. You kept bringing responsibilities that were not mine. I knew they were not my job to do. But you kept throwing them at me. And that time, it was Herculean. It was tough. I won't lie to you. It was tough. But those things exposed me to the business a lot more than my HR function. Now, who knew that those are the sort of things that will be asked at the interview? You don't know. So my glory was to God, but my thanks was to him. Because like Yemi said, stretch functions. Now, very quickly, I'll say this. If only your boss knows that you're a fantastic staff, then you're just one resignation away from becoming invisible. If only your boss knows that you're a fantastic staff, then you're one resignation away from becoming what? Invisible. So the point being very clearly is that if the person is hidden, the challenge is not a capability gap. It's a visibility gap. It's not a capability gap. It's a visibility gap. So that visibility, and we've said a lot of things around that to keep to time. We've said a lot of things around the need to make your job, make yourself become visible. Mentor others. Yes, grow others, and they will speak to what you're doing. Grow them. Get into cross-functional teams. Yes, actually, do other things. So people will see that, oh, this person has integrity, is thinking, and all of that. So just keeping it in the few seconds you mentioned, those are some of the things. Like I said, not a capability gap, it's a visibility gap, and that gap needs to be closed.
Please close your visibility gap, but not by tooting your horn like using a Zella to be making annoying noise. Just be very prudent in the way you market yourself and create visibility for yourself. Yes.
I'll say have a conversation. Yeah. Yeah. So Yemi has given quite a lot of talk around that in terms of all the ifs. But if it's not outrightly difficult, then I would say relationships matter a lot. One of my mentors will say, we do too many emails in our world. So maybe it's just okay to have a conversation to say, I need these things often. Is it okay that I keep getting it from your team members? You know, just a subtle, nice conversation around that. That way, you then find out what the issue is. And sometimes it's probably no issue. Sometimes it's one of the things that Yemi said. And if the person chooses to delegate, the important thing is that you get the information, you get the data that you need. How you get it, it doesn't matter. So that's why I will just add to that point to say, where possible, and that has helped me a number of times, have a conversation around that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Somebody said, how about if it feels like my boss doesn't like, what should I do? Henry. What if it feels like my boss doesn't like?
Noella, this is table shaking. This is table shaking. So again, sometimes we have experiences. I'll say this quickly for our time's sake. I did feel that way at some point. And I'll tell you what I did. And I'll tell you, do not do what I did. Honestly, and this is being vulnerable. I'll tell you what I did. I will tell you, do not do what I did. It was in my young days. And I did things that I should never have done. And I'll tell you, don't do it. So I joined this business and someone was already there in that role as a third-party staff, contract staff, you call third-party staff. The business decided to make an established job position and they went all out. They've had a tough recruitment process. Cut long story short, I became successful through that process. However, the person who was there as a contract staff, I actually met her, one of the most lovely human beings in the world. Honestly, I say that again. This lady was a wonder. If I ever had a choice, I would have given her the job instead of myself. So she was liked, very well liked by the business, by my supervisor. And then who is this fellow coming to take XYZ's job? That was the beginning of the fact that I wasn't hated for anything, but the person who was there before that everybody hoped to get that job was super liked. Me too, I liked her. She was a fantastic fellow. Now, to make matters worse, everybody in that team spoke a particular language. So sometimes meetings are done in that language. And there was I looking at everybody. Guess what? I locked up. I fought back. Once it's time to close, I went home. Sometimes I just locked up in the meetings. I didn't say a word. And I'll tell you the truth. It didn't work out well for me. It did not. Not enough time to state all the things that I did, but I did all the things that were not right. And my growth was really stunted. But at some point, some conversation had to happen. I then walked to my boss and said, this is how I feel. And then she, funny enough, in our vulnerability, she actually told me, you come and took XYZ's job. What did you think? Well, guess what? We then built something. That's why I always talk about a conversation. We built something, but that was 2 years down the line after I suffered so much. We had a conversation, things changed, and we moved on and work was done. Before that, I had all the negative reactions, and I'll tell anybody, don't do that. Do what I said at the end, have that conversation, say this is what I feel. Quite often than not, it does help. I'll tell you that.